Charles II, I do think. Oh. I'm gonna have to start this again. Very warm welcome back, my lovely friends, to The Library is Open. I'm not sure what this voice is that I'm doing now. Not quite sure what that is, but I just committed to it. I hope you've brought your library cards, my lovelies, because it's time for another excursion into La Biblioteca of Dreams. Yes, we're just mixing languages in willy-nilly now. That's where we are in the year. Also, can you believe it's nearly Christmas? I think that's ridiculous. Anyway, irrespective of that, welcome back to The Library is Open, as I say, and today something of a slightly, I don't know, maybe ponderous reading vlog, I guess. I'm aware that I use reading vlog rather interchangeably as well, because I know that reading vlog actually denotes that you watch me do the reading, which I don't tend to do on these, but it just feels like the right word for a kind of wrap up. Although I suppose wrap up would have sufficed, but, well, I haven't done that. So, yeah, why am I slightly ponderous? I don't know, maybe it's that sort of over the yard arm of the year thing. Maybe it's, summer tends to be quite a quiet time in many respects for me, work-wise and stuff, and I tend to thrive when I'm busy, as much as I moan about it, so I do reserve the right to moan. Yeah, I mean, obviously that's taking out sort of the vegan queens and stuff, because normally in normal, whatever normal circumstances are, we'd have a lot of pride gigs and stuff, and although work is slowly starting to trickle back in again, and I am also directing a show, of which more later, so that's keeping me occupied, but, you know, I think I am very much institutionally academicized. That's not a real word, but in terms of, I tend to live by the academic year, which is not an issue necessarily per se, it just is what it is, but, you know, it does sort of mean that in many ways the long summer months are something of a, I don't know, a sort of, I don't want to say trial, because trial feels like too strong a word, really, because I am also very grateful that I do get some of that headspace, but, you know, it's just a long period of time with less sort of full-on activity than I'm used to. There again, that is probably good for me. So, you know, on that note, I am making an effort to drink lots of water and stuff lately. Not abandon my tea and coffee, obviously, but I thought, well, let's make this a period of hydration, if you will. And I've got slightly obsessed with that Volvic. Other brands are available. You know, the watermelon one, they have like a sort of touch of fruit in them. It's the sugar-free one, because I think the sugar ones are too, like, I don't like sugar in things per se, unless they're sweets, in which case, fill your boots. But anyway, yeah. So I'm hydrating a lot and reading a lot, because I'm kind of, I don't know if you ever find yourself sometimes when you've got downtime, you're just sort of either lying there or sitting there or whatever, and you think, well, I could be doing something productive, which is not, you know, necessarily a good thing, I suppose. This is like arguments with myself, this, isn't it? Because I think that what productive means is, you know, a bit of a contentious issue in a, not to go off on a tangent, but in a capitalistic society, we are allowed to do nothing if we want to, you know, so so there we go. That's that. But I do still want to do something that feels productive to me, but is not like monetized or anything. So I'm not doing it because I have to earn money from it. So reading, obviously, my first love and pleasure is that. Oh, also, before I forget, can I just show you how cute is this? It's not sponsored, by the way, so I'm not telling you where I got it from, but it's lovely, isn't it? It's like a little teacup necklace thing in green, which is my fave colour. Oops. So I just thought I'd wear that today to put me in the mood. So with that in mind, yes, I have been reading, and you know, oftentimes you'll hear me say, oh, I do thematic reading, not always on purpose, but just sort of it happens that I end up reading a lot of things around a similar subject. I wonder if that's my Gemini side, because we do have quite addictive and quite pedantic or personality types, I guess. So we get manias about things. I don't mean mania in the sense of in a mental health way. I just mean sort of like we get fixated on certain things. But this time I thought, you know what, I'm just going to read by intuition and see what I want. So with that in mind, I've kind of picked 3 things to talk about that I've been reading lately that have seemingly nothing in common, although that remains to be seen. And the first one, which I featured in one of my hauls a while ago, I can't remember when, it will be on my haul list somewhere in my channel, is this one, Anthony Quinn's London Burning. And Anthony Quinn was the author of Curtain Call and Freya, which I both really enjoyed and read quite a long time ago. In fact, I think I read Curtain Call when I was working in London many moons ago, and it just sort of seemed right, even though it was about a sort of historical period in London's history. But this is really interesting. Now, the title attracted me, not only the author, because I'm a big fan of The Clash and sort of 70s punk generally. Not a lot of people know that. I spent many of my teenage years wearing a padlock around my neck, in sort of tribute to that kind of punk vibe, if you will. So this is a story that reminds me very much of the film Crash and other similar kind of films that that sort of involve a lot of intertwining stories that are seemingly operating at random but all interlink. Catch that quick sniff there. And this is set in the 70s in London, just before the Tory government comes to power under Thatcher. And it concerns our 4 sort of main protagonists are Vicky, who is a WPC, or a plonk, as they're called in the book at the time. Then there's Hannah, who is a sort of political journalist who writes a lot about Northern Ireland. There is Callum, who is a Northern Irish English lecturer, now living in London. And also Freddie, who is a theatre director, producer, who's been having an affair and is kind of the scourge of the papers at the moment because of, various things to do with spending and so on and so forth. It's very evocative of the time period, which is the sort of, I guess, couple of years before I was born. So it would have been a time period that my mum and the rest of my family were aware of, and having discussed it with her and them, indeed, they say that a lot of it sounds like bang on. So what's really lovely about this is that it kind of deals with the, as I said before, the seeming randomness. In fact, it actually name checks that in the text, in the guise of Callum, who's the English lecturer, who is very interested in the presentation of class in the English novel in the sort of late Victorian era sort of thing. And he talks about how oftentimes things will happen in those novels that are seemingly completely out of the blue. A sort of literary technique whereby everything's wrapped up by outrageous coincidences. And that's kind of, I realised afterwards, mirrored in this. There's a sort of real evocation of the interconnectedness of life, which I actually think is probably more true than we give ourselves credit for. That sort of feeling you get when you go, I've just been thinking about that person, I haven't seen them for years, and then suddenly they see you, or they send you a message or whatever, or somebody will mention somebody that they've met over something, and you're like, oh my goodness, I know that person, and so on and so forth. What I particularly enjoyed, and I think this is summed up best in the sort of cover flap, because I don't want to ruin anything, because I do actually really recommend this novel, and I read it really quickly, is London Burning concerns a nation divided against itself, a government trembling on the verge of collapse, a city fearful of what's to come, and a people bitterly suspicious of one another. In other words, it's a novel about now. And not only thinking about the randomness of life, but also about how patterns of history repeat. It really just made me think about, or perhaps not think about, perhaps reflect upon is a better word, just how predictable in its unpredictability life can be, and how there is nothing new under the sun, really, patterns emerge not only in the way that life unfolds, but also in the way that we experience seemingly once in a lifetime phenomena. You know, I suppose a really good example of that would be, or quite a basic example, I suppose, would be the pandemic, you know, and stuff. And if we look back at like the Spanish flu epidemic post World War One, you know, this is not new territory, although there is an idea that it is. I think that also relates very well to the fact that a lot of sort of political pundits have been talking about, you know, the sort of epidemic of our lifetimes. I would argue that actually the HIV/AIDS epidemic is largely ignored in that discourse, but that's a separate subject. Both similarly criminally mishandled, in my opinion. But yeah, I love the punk spirit that runs through this. I love the social commentary. I love the fact that it's not layered on thick, but it sort of lets you find it. It kind of teases it out, I suppose, which is really really nicely done. But not at the expense of a great plot that keeps you turning the pages. So yeah, I've really liked kind of looking at that, and I suppose the one thing about reading novels in, I mean, I suppose this happens with all historical novels, but particularly ones in the more recent past, is the fact that, you know, there's a sort of sense of foreboding because you know what happens next, and that's quite a powerful thing, really. It's kind of mirrored as well in the show that I'm directing at the moment. Like, you know what's coming, because the show, and again, I'll do a separate vlog on this because I thought you might find it interesting. It starts in the 70s, finishes in the like mid-90s, but you know what's about to happen at the conclusion, which I just think there's a little goosebumpy moment there, isn't there? So anyway, this was a totally random choice because I knew it was coming out theoretically, but I actually think Waterstones had it earlier than I expected it to be published, so I picked up a copy, also because it's signed by Kae Tempest, and this is Paradise, which is their reimagining of Philoctetes. If you haven't read Kae Tempest before, they are a wonderful, I'm going to say wordsmith, because they've written for the theatre, but also, you know, purely for spoken word, which is arguably also performative. And one of the reasons I particularly like them is that I recognise the rhythm patterns that they employ, that I also, I don't want to say I employ the same patterns, but I recognise what that is, you know, because for me, writing is to be felt. I mean, it's to be read, but it's to be felt and experienced, and to sort of sit in the body. That's how it's best experienced. So beautiful picture of Leslie Sharp there on the cover in the title role. And for those of you who don't know, this is a opening at the National Theatre, I think on is it the 21st of August, or it might be earlier, let me just check. No, it's the 11th of August, in fact, so by the time this goes up, it probably just opened, or they'll be in previews. Anyway, it's a reimagining of Sophocles' Philoctetes, as I say, from the Greek plays, which, in short, I'm not going to go into a full lesson here because Greek theatre is not my speciality. I know a lot about choral work in Greek theatre, but not the specifics of every single play. So it would be daft for me to try and attempt a history lesson for me to then go, that's not true, and I'd be like, sorry. But yeah, so Philoctetes basically concerns the Trojan War, and the title character is, there's an act of, I suppose what we could say, hubris, and they are abandoned on an island by, I think it's Odysseus, is it? Yeah, and then years later, Odysseus and the son of Achilles come to the island to rescue Philoctetes, to bring him back to win the Trojan War because of like a prophecy. Basically, I'm massively oversimplifying here, but then Philoctetes has been living on this island, and you know, a lot's changed in the interim, and it sort of becomes, in the original play, a meditation on war and, you know, what is it good for, but also on destiny and I guess, again, hubris, but also nationalism and jingoism, so on and so forth. And what Kae's done with this is done something really quite nice with the chorus, who kind of live on the island. They are the kind of narrators, if you will, as they would have been in the Greek play. Oftentimes the Greek chorus would not only act as the narrator, but also as the kind of back and forth conscience of the lead characters. So they were the kind of angel and devil on the shoulders. Sometimes they had opinions, sometimes they didn't. It really varied from play to play. But so yeah, this is kind of half and half updated, half not. So we have a lot of stuff that's really, really current in the text, but particularly where Philoctetes is sort of reflecting on what the point would be of coming back to society. And they mention things like, you know, the state of the economy and the way that we treat people living in poverty. It's very much a driving piece against people being forced to endure conditions of poverty and, you know, violence and nationalism and so on and so forth, but not in a way that feels sort of, again, as with the Anthony Quinn book, not in a way that feels layered on to make a point. It makes the point by alluding to the point and trusting that the reader, or the viewer in the case, because this is a play text, has that existing bank of knowledge and will draw their own conclusions from it. You know, so, and I just thought this is just a beautiful edition. It's a lot bigger than a normal play script, but I'm glad about that. And, you know, I do really love works that reinforce that idea of contemporary relevance in tales as old as time, to paraphrase Angela Lansbury there. But, you know, again, there is nothing new. Everything has been done before, and there is a reason that we tell and retell, I'm going over all ground here, the same stories again and again and again, because people fundamentally don't change. You know, so as with London Burning, this is very much a tale about now, inspired by a tale from thousands of years ago, and there's something shocking, but also perversely lovely about that, but also a third would be slightly depressing, you know, about, I don't know, maybe that's entropy, maybe that's chaos theory, overlapping, I don't know. But anyway, absolutely recommend this. The spoken word is kind of used primarily by the chorus, for those of you that are interested in spoken word, and the rest of it kind of reads as a play text, but just a beautiful crafting of language from a really important voice, and signed as well. So I mean, you can't really say fairer than that, can you? So there we go. And thirdly and finally, perhaps the most kind of out there for me, because I don't particularly read the works of the authors in question, is this one. This is A Friendship in Letters, Robert Louis Stevenson and J.M. Barrie, as edited by Michael Shaw. And this is essentially a collection of letters, some of which have been unpublished before, and some of which have been published before, between J.M. Barrie and Robert Louis Stevenson, both Scottish writers, and the sort of friendship that emerged between them, even though they never actually met, which I don't know, I kind of love that. It put me in mind a little bit of 84 Charing Cross Road, and it also reminded me ever so slightly of, there's a play about Wilfred Owen and Siegfried Sassoon called Not About Heroes. It kind of reminded me of that as well, although it is very much its own thing. So yeah, this is basically a compendium of their letters and just sort of like reflections on the esteem for each other and how they forged a relationship without meeting in the flesh, as it were. You know, obviously J.M. Barrie, famously the creator of Peter Pan, amongst other things, and Robert Louis Stevenson, debatably most famous for Kidnapped and Treasure Island. And it's about their sort of, yeah, it's about their admiration for one another, and it's a kind of love story in many ways, although they never actually met, and neither gives sort of any indication that they, well, that's not quite true, neither gives any indication that they were in any way gay or anything like that. But there again, labels aren't immovable and they're not fixed, so whatever. But but yeah, it reminded me a lot of, and I did a little bit of reading up after, of the idea of romantic friendship in Victorian fiction, which is like a massive thing. And I kind of want to do a bit more research on that, you know, my love for all things Victorian, and just about how friendships were treated in that time. And I think we're kind of getting around to that idea again now in some respects of, you know, the sort of not just placing romantic relationships or physically romantic or whatever at center stage and everything else is inferior to. And I also, you know, my personal interest, I'm really interested in sort of same-sex friendships and affection between persons of, well, I should say same-sex or same-gender friendships, just because I find that really, really fascinating, because there's so many, you know, rules about what is allowed and not allowed in these kind of friendships, or how people relate to each other, which that's a whole other vlog. But I like to look at what that was like historically, you know, because I think we have this idea that there are fixed ideas around these things in our contemporary times, but actually they're all up for grabs. And again, nothing is new. So this is just really, really fun. And I thought, you know, I've not read some letters for a while, and I just really like the cover. So I thought, you know what, I really, really fancy that. Just have a little read of it. And it's fascinating. There's a lot of stuff in here that I didn't know about either of them. Although, as I say, I'm not necessarily au fait with both of their works. I taught Treasure Island the play a few months ago, but that's about it. And my nan was obsessed with Kidnapped for a very short period of time. But that's kind of it. I've never really been a huge Peter Pan fan, I'll be honest. I don't know why. In fact, I might teach Peter Pan, well, the play version of, next semester, actually. I'm debating it, funnily enough. The randomness of life, once again. But yeah, I suppose this one in particular is what made me think twice about calling this completely like a random vlog, because actually the one thing that connects all the pieces is that maybe they're all really about what it is to be human and what it is to experience the world as a person, unaware that you are repeating things that slightly unaware that you're repeating things that people have been through many times before, that you know, that the world is cyclical and everything comes around again. You know, I'm explaining this very badly, but I guess that human need for connection is what unites them all in one form or another, be they random connections, be they cultivated connections, be they not even in-person connections, be they societal connections based on an understanding of the big things like war and peace, as in the Kae Tempest text. And I just think, you know, we forget so often, don't we, how interconnected we really, really are, and also how interconnected we are, not just as people, but with the animals, with the planets, with anybody or anything that resides on planet Earth is part of that cycle of renewal and change and reversal and all of those things. These are huge concepts that I'm aware I'm not doing massive amounts of justice to, but, you know, maybe sometimes if we hone in on those connections, we would perhaps understand ourselves and understand each other a little bit better, you know. So yeah, I told you it was going to be random, but that's my reflections for this week and the seemingly unconnected texts that I've read. So I'm going to stop jabbing now, because we're nearly on jabbering, sorry, because we're nearly on 25 minutes. But yes, let's call it a day. So put your library cards somewhere safe, wiped clean and waterproof, because it's blinking horrible in England at the moment. The weather is foul, and I hope it's better where you are. But until next time, let me know what you thought, if you enjoyed this vlog and my seemingly random outpourings. I feel like I store them up all week and then just film and like inflict them on you. But yes, until next time. Yes, see, I can't keep track. Give us a like if you enjoyed. If you didn't, don't. or just do anyway because you're a nice person. Leave us a comment down below on anything you're reading at the moment, anything that you've been musing on, any random connections you've found, any reflections on any of the subjects that I've mentioned. And I will see you in the next vlog, my lovely, lovely, lovely people. Please be safe out there, and please be really good to yourself and to everyone else with whom you are connected. Much love. Mwah.